All right, and welcome back. We are here. I am Tyson, joined here by Courtney for our round two here today. Super excited to get back into the action. If you missed it, our round one was Dan versus Tim Edwards, and that was a super exciting match. Miraidon versus the Cataract Shadow, which we talked a little bit about in our pre-show, but round two here, we have tons of possibilities. We got a little bit of a sneak peek here at our top Pokemon graphics for both restricted and unrestricted. Those are going to be super exciting to see when those do get pulled up on stream. As we see Urshifu, the bear in charge, leading the charge at 41%, kind of maintaining that dominating reign that we talked about a little bit before, just having such control over the metagame. Basically, almost 50% of the teams that you're going to see in tournament today are going to feature that Urshifu. Some other cool picks here that Miensha that we got to see round one, Chiyu, Grimmsnarl, but who cares about those? We have Walking Wake at 25% as well. The same amount as Rillaboom. Yes, Rillaboom, the other stable Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm like, is Rillaboom a fraud or is Walking Wake going crazy right now? I know I saw it last weekend in the Stockholm Regional Championships on stream, and it's one of those Pokemon that I feel like has always kind of been there. It's always been lurking a little bit, but I feel like when you can really piece together a team around it, it's really fascinating to go ahead and see. But it is, I know before we got back on air, me and you were like, Walking Wake? What? At 25% is insane. And not only that, but being above Clefairy and Mienshao, and especially Chiyu, our
Yeah.
favorite goldfish. Craziness right now.
Like, a lot of these Pokemon make sense with the Urshifu, the Fluttermane, the Ogerpon, and the Rillaboom, but seeing Walking Wake up there as well is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. But let's take a look at our restricted Pokemon as well. Let's get the percentages on those. Calyrex leading the charge on this one. Actually, almost double the amount of Miraidon there and then Koraidon. And then the Calyrex Ice, I guess you manifested it. He's not even, he's
Yes.
barely even
Woo!
on the graphic. He doesn't even belong in the box.
But
That's
even
just how out of the meta he is, I guess.
exactly. But I think we are forgetting about the elephant in the room, or maybe the big bird in the room. A ho-oh? Huh? What?
Yeah, Ho-Oh being the same percentage as that Calyrex Ice, the Terapagos, and the Zapazenta is just absolutely diabolical to me. Of course, the percentages here are going to be a little bit skewed because of the amount of players, but that is still crazy to see that someone brought Ho-Oh today. I'm just confused what Ho-Oh does. I know it has the Sacred Fire. I know it has Recover. Regenerator, but that's about it. I also know it gets one shot by Miraidon, so I'm really curious to see what it can do today if it does get featured on stream.
Well, I'm just saying, if it does get featured on stream, you are definitely going to be hearing me say, hey, ho, hey, ho, because
We get a little cheer going.
I'm so excited to see ho, especially being at the same percentage as Calyrex Ice Rider. I am just, as we all have known, I am just not a big Calyrex Ice Rider fan, and I'm also not a big Zamazenta fan. So seeing both of those Pokemon being under Calyrex Shadow Rider and Miraidon and Koraidon makes me one happy caster today. Let me tell y'all. But I am very fascinated to see that Calyrex Shadow Rider being above Miraidon, especially with how strong Miraidon has been into this regulation, and being the same percentage as Koraidon as well. Maybe Wolf Glick did something to Koraidon's stocks and now it's up. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I think Koraidon was super, a really cool team. And then not only did Wolfie kind of like not pioneer, but like kind of reinvented with the Life Orb set and winning EUIC there, but having the Koraidon team kind of before be the clear Amulet one, him kind of inventing on it is really, really cool, and I'd be interested to see which version the players are playing here at the tournament today. The Calyrex Shadow, though, makes a lot of sense here in this tournament. When you have something like a lot of Miraidons in the field, Calyrex Shadow does really well, especially those bulkier teams there, as we saw with the Mienshao, the Calyrex Shadow with the Citrus Berry, and the Clefairy. Teams like
I
that really excel into the Miraidon, being able to, as we saw in that round one, kind of out-sustain the Miraidon. And because Miraidon doesn't have extra things like healing, really, you just
Mhm.
out-damage a lot of the time the other Pokemon.
Well, and I think one Pokemon we didn't talk about is Tropicos. Tropicos is on that set. It's at that 8.33%, especially with those other Pokemon too. And I think it's been very fascinating. I feel like when this regulation really started, that we saw Tropicos a lot more at the beginning of this regulation. A lot of people were running it. A lot of people were like, this is the Pokemon to beat. But now we're not seeing it played around that much anymore. And I think Urshifu is kind of the cause of that, especially when it's holding at 41.67 percentage in this cup right now. As I feel like people are very scared of that bear, especially when it comes to Terapagos.
Yeah, that bear is what's going to be the problem there. It just does so much damage into something like Tropicos, just threatening the super effective damage. So you really have to be careful how you position it. It's kind of like Kyrex, except it's going to be super effective damage into the Tropicos compared to the Kyrex, where it's just completely immune to those close combats. And with something like Citrus Berry as well, those Surging Strikes are going to be able to whittle down the Kyrex, and then with the Citrus Berry, you heal back up. Urshifu is just such an important piece that you have to build around. There's not really a way you can kind of avoid it in team building. So small optimizations like that on the Kyrex really kind of make or break the team. Our two players here are beginning to set up a little bit. I'm super excited to get into our round two here, though. Our featured players today. We're going to feature Vincent Mateo here as, wow, I'm just stunned by this team. I
Huh?
want to start explaining the player, but I see a lot of unique picks here. Courtney, do you want to break it down for us?
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you have gone to the tri state or been to any locals, you all know Vincent. I even know Vincent. I'm all the way in Chicago. An amazing player, an amazing person as well, and bringing a very interesting team. Calyrex Shadow Rider coming in with those choice specs. So putting on those glasses, ready to go. But I think the more important Pokemon to talk about is the Galarian Wheezing, especially running that Covert Cloak. And then you also do see that, our favorite family, our Tandemouts of growing ahead with those safety goggles, the Roaring Moon with the photosynthesis, Urshifu with the light orb, and of course, once again, our Ogerpon with the Hearth Flame, and sorry, excuse me, Mousehold, because it's a household of mouses. But
Yeah,
Vincent, interesting team. Talk to me about it, Tyson.
absolutely. And not only are all these Pokemon here super interesting, I think you could dive into every single one of them. But we'll get back to that in a second. Max here is going to be our second player running that fabled Kyrex Ice there. I believe, I don't think it's the exact same team as Michael Kelch. It might be. I'm not too familiar with that team, but we have a very similar build, that's for sure, with the hard Trick Room there. We have the Indeedee and the Smeargle, as well as two choice Pokemon, both on the physical and the special end. You have the Urshifu and the Torkoal, both able to do so much damage. The Urshifu there, the Urshifu Dark, able to draw those blows and close combats, as well as the Torkoal firing off those sun-boosted fire eruptions with that choice specs boosting it up as well. Raging Bolt there to take advantage of that sun. Fun in the sun with Raging Bolt, those boosted Thunderclaps and Thunderbolts, as well as Draco Meteors if they do opt for it. And two Redirectors to make sure that Trick Room gets to go up in the Indeedee and the Smeargle. And not only are they going to be able to redirect those attacks, but they'll be able to stop any other attacks as well with Double Follow Me, as well as Fake Out on the Smeargle, and the Psychic Train on the Indeedee. So lots of different tools here from Max. Kind of a very front to back team, if that makes sense, where you kind of set up your Trick Room, you let your partner go down, you bring in a special damage dealer or a physical damage dealer, and then the other one. And then Trick Room goes up, or Trick Room is up, and then you win the game. If it goes down, you probably lose. So it's a very honest team, I think. Like, a lot of the times, people kind of disrespect these teams, but I think they're very honest teams. And they teach you to play Pokemon very fundamentally. Like, you have to be able to play and understand game plans, which I think is a core part of the game, and a lot of people struggle to understand, myself included. But I wanted to honestly touch on the first team a little bit because its matchup into Max's team is really, really interesting. The Weezing there are going to be able to shut down the abilities of everything, but the Calyrex there is going to be super, super cool. You're stopping things like Psychic Terrain, you're stopping things like the Photosynthesis, as well as the Drought as well. So I think this Weezing is going to be a pivotal piece for Vincent as we get into round 2 here of Max Gelman versus Vincent Mateo, where Max leads the Raging Bolt and the Indeedee, and Vincent leads the Urshifu and Weezing.
Yeah, very interesting lead. Kind of a Max aside personally for me. Seeing that Indeedee there, of course, we all know what Indeedee does best, and that is setting up that Trick Room, which is going to be Max's #1 priority. However, I think Max has to keep in mind that there is that Weezing that's staring it down right now, and that is a Pokemon that Max just does not want to see. And Vincent knows that that is such a pivotal piece to his team. We do see that Urshifu sitting right next to that Weezing, just ready to go. Of course, you know, just how Urshifu does. We saw that 41% does not shy away at all, and we're going to see that Urshifu kind of a little bit more. But we do see the Weezing come back in exchange for that. Let's see. I always forget about the neutralizing gas, of course.
And yeah, what I thought was going to be really cool there is you have a potential interaction where Max could go for something like the Thunderclapper and the Urshifu because there's no terrain. But if you're Vincent, you could switch out the Weezing and actually have gone for an attack with the Urshifu. Instead opting for Protect, Thunderbolt going off into that Weezing slot, the Ogrepon is going to take it very nicely. And this Indeedee is going to get Tricked. So very good turn 1 from Max there. I was thinking Vincent could have gone for an attack there. Maybe you don't want to lose Urshifu there to a Thunderbolt, but you're kind of pivoting now, and both these Pokemon don't really want to be a Trick Room. Yes, you have Follow Me, but this is just really unfortunate. Here's a redirecting attack. This Raging Bolt is going to be able to fire off Thunderbolts into the Urshifu slot, and you kind of force Vincent to go for Follow Me. Everything in the back there for Vincent is going to take damage from the Thunderbolt. Urshifu switching out there. The Calyrex comes in. Yes, it's not super effective anymore, but you are choice, so you have to make a decision under Trick Room what to lock into, while Max just kind of gets to play around with their pieces.
Yeah, I think Max really played that turn 1 very, very effortlessly. I think understanding and saying, hey, you have to do something, but for me, I can just kind of click the buttons that I want to, running that Thunderbolt and running that Trick Room. Not really scared, but we do see a double into that Calyrex Shadow Rider, and it living on just 2 HP, which is pivotal for Vincent, making sure that that restricted did not go down. And I know Max is saying, huh? Wait a second. Is that right? And Vincent, you know, switching it in was a little bit of a daunting task, but I think is very, very happy that that Calyrex Shadow Rider did survive that double up into it.
Yeah, because I think the important thing is not losing a restricted in this matchup because they're both able to do so much damage. Again, both those horses able to fire off those 100% accurate moves, the Calyrex in its Astral Barrage, and its Calyrex Ice in its Glacial Lance. You do have the option to follow me here with the Ogrepon and redirect those hits from Max's Pokemon, but Raging Bolt here is instead going to switch out into a different Pokemon. It's going to be the Urshifu able to take whatever hit Calyrex locked into. Follow Me coming out here. Max is going to be able to fire off an attack, though, with this Indeedee. As it is, the Psychic, this is going to be boosted in terrain, doing a decent chunk to the Ogrepon. I don't think another one's going to get there. Astral Barrage fires off. Not only is it going to be immune to this Indeedee, though, but it's going to be resistant to Max's Urshifu, but does 50% with that choice specs.
I think one thing I do want to kind of mention, Tyson, is that something I kind of was like, wait a second, is that Calyrex Shadow Rider is running a very unique set on Vincent's side. And something that caught my eye personally is the Pollen Puff. That we're running the Calyrex Shadow Rider with Pollen Puff instead of Protect, which is something that I've not personally seen kind of playing throughout these different types of games. I think Protect is so necessary, especially when we're talking about Calyrex Shadow Rider, which because at this point, Vincent has to switch it out because he can't lose that restricted in that momentum. But running Psyshock and Pollen Puff was just something that I thought was very fascinating on Vincent's side, especially with the way that his team is kind of played around.
Yeah, and a really well played there from Vincent. This was an amazing switch, bringing in that Weezing, allowing the neutralizing gas to go up, meaning Urshifu doesn't get its Unseen Fist, meaning it's not able to go through Protect there and actually takes a little bit of chip from that spiky shield. That was super, super well played, and you're kind of burning these Trick Room turns if you're Vincent. Because your Calyrex did live, as long as you can preserve it for out of Trick Room and get it back in, you can kind of start going on a tear. You have to be very, very careful which Pokemon switch in, though. I think Weezing, you kind of have to let this Weezing go down as well as Ogerpon, so that next turn you can bring in your other Pokemon, that being your Urshifu and your Calyrex. But Max here is still in a dominant position, having all 4 of the Pokemon. Urshifu actually switching out there.
Interesting. Seeing it coming into the Raging Bolt again. And as we all know, Max is currently running that Indeedee, the Raging Bolt, the Urshifu, and assuming the Calyrex Shadow or Ice Rider in the back. But we see that Indeedee goes for that Psychic into that Overpon, taking it out, which for Vincent is not something that he wants to see. But what he does want to see is the fact that Twisted Dimensions are no longer, and now he can just start to speed through things, but has to respect Max and that Raging Bolt, especially with Thunderclap in its toe.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only is Thunderclap such a threat, of course, if you are Vincent, you go for a play with your switch here, you just go for Protect, or you could risk the attack, maybe go for an Aqua Jet. The problem here is you don't have a Terastallization either to switch out against this Raging Bolt. Yes, you can go into Terastallization Water. You can hope this Aqua Jet picks up the Indeedee, but knowing most Indeedee are physically bulky, this most likely will not out. And that's going to be a problem here for Vincent. You do probably have to go, you have Taunt on your Weezing, which is definitely an option to prevent this Trick from going up. But then the problem is, how do you get around Thunderclap? Everything on Vincent's team is within Thunderclap range.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing it's very scary for Vincent. I think they really have to kind of think about, how can I get into a point where it's checkmate? And I think it's going to be very difficult for Vincent to kind of play around these different types of turns, especially with that Indeedee sitting there very comfortably, especially bringing back that Psychic Surge, going ahead and making that field a little bit weird, and possibly running up that Trick Room once again, because one thing that Vincent does not want to see right now is another Trick Room setup, because at that point, it's going to be a very, very steep hill for Vincent to get out of. But we do see that Surging Strikes going into the Indeedee, going ahead and getting a little bit of chip from the Rocky Helmet, but knocking out that Indeedee on Max's side of the field, which is a great position for Vincent. Making that switch out, understanding that that Thunderclap was probably going to go towards that Weezing, making that read, and then going for that Surging Strike was a great, great play done by Vincent.
So even less than that, I think that was a phenomenal turn. I want to kind of break that down, where the Weezing actually switched out to remove to reinstate the terrain because of the neutralizing gas. Knowing that Thunderclap is going to go in either, instead of playing that Mind Gamer or the Urshifu slot, just making the terrain go back up if you are Max, forcing the terrain to be against him in his favor, or using it in Vincent's favor there, allowing the Urshifu to get off an attack. And now that there's no Trick Room and this Calyrex is on the field, with the Psychic terrain reinstated on the field, this is a super dangerous position. Even if Urshifu is brought back in here, it can't Sucker Punch because it already is. It's Choice Bandit in Psychic Terrain, so you have to pick a move. And this Calyrex is going to be able to fire off its Astral Bashes plus Surging Strikes, and I think this match is going to be in Vincent's favor.
Yeah, wow. What a comeback on Vincent's side. Especially, I think what we were talking about before this game started is that Galarian Weezing really being a pivotal Pokemon throughout this set. Really going ahead and making abilities happen and making them go away, which has been really, really fascinating, especially when you're talking about a Pokemon that's a little bit more niche, especially when we're talking about this regulation a little bit more. But we do see that Terastallization going ahead and going on on Vincent's side, actually, into that Terastallization of that Cali Shadow, into that Ghost type to make
so
sure.
Tiny.
I know. It's so cute, though. Come on. Come on.
The Ghost is so tiny on Calyrex's head, and that's definitely another Terastallization that we don't get to see often with Terra Ghost. Calyrex here is going to Terastallize into that fire type, but that is not enough. This Urshifu is also attacking into that slot. We know that the Terra Ghost Choice Specs Astral Barrage is going to fire off here, most likely knocking out This Rage Squad be very surprised didn't.
Oof.
Calyrex takes so much damage, and this Urshifu was able to follow up. And yeah, this is going to be game one for Vincent here. Very well played, and I think the Weezing is super interesting, right? Because you don't really have terrain control in this team, so being able to control your opponent's team or terrain whenever you want it to go up is super, super pivotal. And just really, really well played from Vincent on that last turn, switching out the Weezing and reinstating that terrain.
Especially when you're talking about having that Raging Bolt and that Urshifu with both that Thunderclap and Sucker Punch, is that Psychic Terrain can be either in your favor or extremely against you. And Vincent understood that and really made sure that that Weezing was going ahead and moving in and out at the correct times to make sure that, hey, you can go for Thunderclap, but I'm going to make it punish you just a little bit, truthfully. And I think that was just such a phenomenal game done by Vincent, understanding that, hey, I know you're going to set up Trick Room. There's no way that I can get around it. However, I'm going to go to punish you for that. And then being able to move those pieces around, make that Trick Room go down, and then really just put the pressure with that 2 HP Calyrex, which is just so fascinating to me. And once again, talking about that set was so interesting, especially when you're running that choice specs, is that Pollen Puff is just something that I don't see very often. And it's got me all jazzed up. I really want to see it. I really want to see it, truthfully. But Vincent, phenomenal game done by them.
Yeah, and I think actually preserving their pieces so well, that Spadef drop was really, really unfortunate from that Psychic there on Max's side, but Vincent's Calyrex able to hang in there, even with the special defense drop. The Thunderbolt not able to knock out that Calyrex ended up being that pivotal piece that we kind of talked about. I think Pollen Puff is definitely an interesting move for sure. If you are choice specs, you don't really have room for the Protect, obviously, but I don't know what else you would run in that slot. Maybe Leaf Storm or Dark Pulse, but I think Pollen Puff is just a great move as well to keep the rest of your team alive. A lot of the Pokemon here on Vincent's side don't mind the Pollen Puff, things like the Urshifu with the Life Orb, Ogerpon from following me their attacks. The Pollen Puff also hits a lot of things that Calyrex might want to terastallize against your Calyrex. Things like the Dark type, Pollen Puff hits that super effectively. It's also immune to Psychic moves, so having a way to hit Dark types is really nice. So Pollen Puff might be there for that, as well as the healing.
Hey, as everybody knows, if you know me, I am the bug girl. So anytime I can see a bug move, it makes me so excited. And this set has honestly got me all jazzed up. But one thing I think we have to kind of keep in mind is that Urshifu is still making sure that it's there. I think one thing I do have to say about Urshifu is that it is the bare necessities to bring that Urshifu to each match. And as we go ahead and get into this next one, this will be game 2 of round 2 at the PC at Collector's Emporium. And I am so excited as we see Max bring out Indeedee and Calyrex. So a switch up on Max's side, and we see on Vincent's side as well that Weezing and Urshifu, making sure that that Psychic Terrain does not go up and goes ahead and makes sure that, hey, these abilities, what are they? What are they actually?
Yeah, and the cool thing here is that Calyrex is actually going to be immune to that neutralizing gas. So not only does it get its Unnerve there, but it still gets its Grenade boost. Calyrex being the interesting Pokemon there to not really be affected by the Weezing, which is always interesting mechanic-wise. But the Weezing and Urshifu here are a great duo here. This Weezing opting for Taunt and this Urshifu opting for Life Orb, able to do lots of damage, and Weezing just being an amazing support piece. The unfortunate thing is you are only able to taunt one of these Trick Roomers, so if you are Max, you can easily go for something like a Follow Me and a Trick Room here, and there's nothing really Vincent can do other than taunt your Indeedee. And taunting your Indeedee just makes sure you can't follow me on subsequent turns, but the damage would have been done, aka setting up Trick Room. Vincent is going for the Terror of Water here, which is very interesting though. Maybe the taunt is not enough. I think Vincent might believe that Surging Strike is able to get the knockout here on Indeedee. If it does, that would be huge. The Life Orb plus Terror of Water actually might be enough to get there. That's going to be huge if it does. Yeah, it does look like it's going to get it. So that means Weezing's going to be able to get a taunt off from this Calyrex, and it's going to come down to what this Calyrex opts to do. If it did go for a Glacial Lance, it's going to get Urshifu in very, very low range and maybe bring losing to half. But if it goes for Trick Room there, that's going to be a very good turn one for Vincent.
Yeah, we see that Ndidi was just not able to take that terrestrialized water Urshifu surging strikes, which once again just shows us that bear is just so strong. We see that taunt going into that Calyrex Ice Rider, and as we saw that the Calyrex went for that Trick Room and not able to pull it out because of that taunt. Vincent playing that turn one masterfully, understanding that Max, hey, you have to Trick Room something. Let's see which one you're going to, and really played that hand so well with that terrestrialization and that taunt pair up. As we see the Urshifu on Max's side come in, it is just such a tricky situation for Max. He needs that Trick Room. He needs to be able to move that Calyrex Shadow or that Calyrex Ice Rider a little bit faster, but not sure how he's going to go ahead and get that set up, especially with that taunt.
Yeah, and Calyrex switching out there to bring in Torkoal, wanting to lower the damage of these water moves that Urshifu with the Life Orb is threatening on the field, but not actually going to get the sun up. I forgot. The neutralizing gas is neutralizing my thoughts, and my brain just completely shut off there. This Urshifu, though, on Max's side is going to terrestrialize into the grass, and that won't be affected by the neutralizing gas, so you're not going to be able to do much damage to there. But the Torkoal with no sun, Aqua Jet does so much damage. Ironhead from the Urshifu there. Choice Banded, not able to knock out that Weezing, and Will-O-Wisp, of course, not able to affect the Torkoal.
Wow, what an interesting turn that was. I think once again we have to talk about the turtles. Our Terapagos, our Torkoal are not faring too well right now, especially as we saw how much that Aqua Jet did because that there is no sun in the sky right now. Just a little bit cloudy, It's giving a little bit, EUIC this last year, a little rainy, but it's okay because Max is just really going to figure out how they're going to go ahead and say, hey, is my Torkoal pivotal for this at this point? We do have a terrestrialized Urshifu. We understand that Vincent can't go ahead and terrestrialize with the other two Pokemon, but what are those other two Pokemon? Definitely one has to be that Calyrex Shadow Rider. Might not be, but probably is. But what is that last one that Vincent has brought with them as well? We see that Torkoal going back onto Max's side with that Calyrex Ice Rider coming back onto the field, taunted no longer, and still being able to get those abilities off as well.
Yeah, my issue here with Max's position is that Vincent is just threatening so much damage with this Terra Water Urshifu. You're going to do about 50% of this Calyrex, and we already know what's waiting in the backs, as you kind of alluded here for Vincent. It's going to be that Calyrex Shadow, and with the choice specs is definitely going to be enough to just totally run through the rest of his team. Ironhead is going to be able to knock out the Weezing, but it's too little too late. We know the Calyrex is going to come in here, and in combination with this Urshifu, is going to be able to mow through the rest of the team. Yes, you can bring in the sun, but Torkoal is also low. This Urshifu, being Choice Bandit, can't even go for a Sucker Punch, which is kind of why Vincent went for the Aqua Jet. A lot of people would be maybe curious of why. You know that you're faster than the other Urshifu because a lot of the time they're like no speed on these Trick Room teams, but you know that Max might want to go for something like a Sucker Punch, so going for Aqua Jet there makes a lot of sense, and then if they don't, they just attack, then you get dropped down, but because you're not choice locked, if you're Vincent, you can just go for Surging Strikes, as we saw the past two turns. But now you have your Urshifu and your Calyrex on Vincent's side, and you're able to just kind of click buttons and tear through the rest of his team.
Yeah, one of the things that I have been doing, especially while prepping for the Atlanta Regional Championships, is that I've been working with a really close-knit team, and this is what we would call a barrage bowl. This is something that an Astral Barrage at this range with that Calyrex Shadow Rider is in just such a comfortable position because right now Vincent has the speed, he has the momentum to go ahead and just really, like you were kind of saying, press buttons. Press that Astral Barrage. We have that Ogre Pond there if we want to go ahead and start redirecting things. But that Calyrex Shadow Rider is really not threatened at all at this point. It is really just sitting there comfortably. As we see that Astral Barrage going off, the Calyrex Ice Rider, of course, goes ahead and protects. But that Astral Barrage does go into that Torkoal who just joined the field and does knock it out, putting Max to his last two Pokemon.
Yeah, and if you are going to make a play like this, if you are Max, this is the best way. You have a way back into the game because Vincent's Ogre Pond is here or sorry, oh, it did switch in that turn actually. So never mind. Vincent covered for that perfectly there. I was saying if you kept Urshifu in, Max made the best play you could. Assuming you keep an Urshifu, then you don't have Ogre Pond to redirect something like the Sucker Punch for Max next turn. But because you did switch Ogre Pond that turn, this Calyrex is able to just fire off another After Barrage and take the knockout and get a 2-0 win here against Max.
An incredible game done by Vincent Mateo. And once again, if you've ever been to any of the tri-state locals, you know Vincent and just what an incredible play that was. Especially, I'm actually really excited about that Galarian Weezing. I have not seen a Galarian Weezing play that well since it's been a minute, honestly. So it's been really exciting to see it, especially with that Indeedee there. And like you were talking about, how masterfully Vincent played that, especially when understanding that you've got that Thunderclap, you do have those sucker punches, but also kind of disrespecting Max's game plan with that. So yeah, phenomenal. I'm like jazzed. I'm like, wait a second, should I start running Galarian Weezing?
Yeah, Weezing's definitely a interesting Pokemon there, and it being able to have so much control over that battle, kind of making Max have to think about when the Indeedee is kind of going down. Not only are you making Max think, but you also, as the Weezing player, have to think of when do I want my Weezing to go down or when do I want it to switch out so I can kind of take control of their terrain. And that last turn there, being able to switch out the terrain or switch out your Weezing to get the terrain and then having the Thunderclap be neutralized in that game was really, really smart from Vincent and just really well played. I think the choice specs, Calyrex, as well as the Life Orb Urshifu, also were just damage calcs that people aren't normally ready for. I definitely know I wouldn't be. That extra damage that you get from the Life Orb compared to something like the Mystic Water does add up. And as we saw in that match, was able to actually knock out something like the Indeedee, where I think normally a Mystic Water would not be able to. And especially with something like Sun in the back potentially for Max, Urshifu normally isn't a problem, but who cares about Sun when you have neutralizing gas? I think Vincent played that game absolutely amazing, so congratulations to them for their 2-0. But if that's all, I think we're going to cut to a quick break after this. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be back for more VGC action soon enough.